This is 7C out. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. Yep.
So you have no idea, right?
Well, if you consume Julie,
Yep. If I assume, Julie.
of course, you have no idea, right?
Well, it might be, but if you assume, Julie.
Of course.
I know, right? So, if you assume.
Yep.
Freya. Did I realize that, Julie?
Of course.
I know, right? If you assume, Julie.
I know. So, if you consume,
Yep. If I assume, Julie. Because if you didn't notice, definitely. Eventually. So, if you assume.
yep.
Frey. If you assume, Julie.
Of course.
You have no idea, right?
Well, if you consume Julie,
Yep. If I assume, I guess, Julie.
of course.
I know, right? If you assume, Julie.
I know. So, if you consume,
Yep, cause I didn't notice. Eventually, cause I didn't notice you could see him, right?
of course.
I know. So, if you could see him, Julie.
Yep.
Fry. So, if you could see him.
Yep.
Fry, yeah. Did I realize that, actually?
Of course.
Yeah, I'm doing it, right?
Well, if you consume Julie,
Yep. If you assume, Julie.
of course. You have no idea.
Well, if you assume.
Yep.
Freya. So, if you assume, Julie.
Yep.
Freya. Did I realize that, actually?
Of course. If you assume Julie, cause you didn't notice. If you assume,
Yep.
Freya. Did I realize that Julie?
Of course. You have no idea, but you assume, eventually. Cause if you assume, right?
Well, it might be.
I know, eventually. So, if you assume.
Yep.
Right. Did I realize that, eventually?
Of course. You have no idea.
Oh, if you assume.
Yep.
Freya. Did I realize that, eventually?
Of course.
Well, if you assume.
Yep.
Freya. Did I realize that, visually?
Of course.
You have no idea. So, if you assume.
Yep.
Freya. Because you didn't know this. So, if you assume.
Yep.
Freya. Because you didn't know this. Eventually.
Of course.
I know, right? So, if you assume, visually.
Yep.
Freya. So, if you assume.
Yep.
Okay.
So, you didn't know this?
Nope.
Okay.
If you assume, visually.
Of course.
I know, right? If you assume, visually.
I know, so, if you assume.
Yep.
Okay. So, you didn't know this?
Nope.
Right, did I realize that officially?
Of course.
You have no idea.
I know, right?
Well, if you consume visually.
Yep.
Okay. So, you didn't know this?
Yep.
Right.
If you consume visually,
Of course.
you have no idea, right?
Well, if you consume.
Yep.
Right. Did I realize that visually?
Of course. If you consume visually,
Right. Did I realize that visually?
of course, you have no idea. If you consume visually,
Of course. If you consume.
yep.
Right. You have no idea.
Well, if you consume visually,
Yep.
right, yeah. Did I realize that visually?
Of course. You have no idea.
Well, if you consume,
Yep.
right, yeah. If you consume visually,
Of course.
you have no idea. So if you consume visually,
Yep.
right, yeah. If you consume visually, because you didn't notice. So if you consume,
Yep.
right, yeah. So if you consume visually,
Yep.
right, yeah. If you consume visually,
I know. So if you consume.
yep. Because I didn't know this. If you consume visually,
I know. Why? So you consume visually.
because you didn't know this.
Definitely. If you consume visually.
I know, right? If you consume,
Yep.
right? If you consume visually,
I know. Why?
so if you consume,
Yep.
right?
Because you didn't know this.
I know, right?
So if you consume.
Yep.
Right. Did I realize that visually?
Of course.
So if you consume.
Yep.
Right. Did I realize that visually?
Of course.
So you consume visually.
I know. If you consume,
Yep.
okay. If you consume visually, because you didn't know this, right?
Of course.
You have no idea.
I know visually.
Okay. If you consume visually,
Yep. Because you consume.
okay. And just let me know
Oh, okay.
if you said so.
Right.